I mentally went over several possible greetings as the hovercar came to rest in front of me. It was a rattletrap affair, not able to keep its tail above ground for long, dragging a dust cloud behind it. I did my best not to cough as the dust washed over me. Two smallish turtledillos got out and approached. "Greetings," I said, squinting at the dust. That's as far as I got. "You're a human, yeah?" blurted the taller one. "Like from t'other end of the sky?" He spoke with a different accent from the city folk I was used to, and his companion did the same. Both wore yellow-brown shell paint that was flaking around the edges. "What do you out here?" he asked, peering at the mess behind me. "Did you crash your sky car?" "Something like that," I said. "How far? Is it true you can squeeze through a hole the size of your head and survive being cut in half? Springleaf says both halves turn into new humans, but I know that's trash." "No, though if there's a good medical crew," the other one chimed in. "Does your spit really corrode metal and poison a folk if you bite one?" "Well, there's bacteria. How fast do it work?" I put my hands on my hips and bared my teeth. "Would you like to find out?" They were silent for a heartbeat. "How far to Seasoul Haven from here?" They both pointed in slightly different directions, contradicting each other as they explained how to get there. Apparently, this was a lengthy journey. When they were getting to the part about the fields of long grass where dangerous wild animals were known to spring out at people, a peal of thunder interrupted them. I looked up with some concern. The sky was a darker gray now, and the wind spun by quickly. Buildings huddled far in the distance, but only those woven dome things were close. My dented escape pod had to be more rainproof than them, but I didn't like the odds of weathering a lightning strike inside it. The locals had a different concern. They chattered about wind-borne shrapnel, urging me toward the nearest wicker-looking thing. I limped after the pair. The wind didn't seem dangerously strong yet, but they knew more than I did about the local hazards. If this dome of loose sticks was the safest place to be, I wouldn't argue. I did wonder, since many of the gaps were big enough to stick an arm through, and a large opening yawned at the top, but I held my silence. "Hurry in!" the tall one said, pulling open the door and waving me forward. "Careful of hitting your head, and don't step on the sparklings." I obligingly ducked through the doorway, watching the ground for sparklings, whatever they were. Rows of narrow-leafed plants greeted my eyes. They were a deep green with weird-looking fruits just starting to sprout. These had spines, ridges, and the tiniest sparks of electricity dancing along them. I kept well to the sides of the room. The turtledillos didn't follow me in. Instead, they shut the door and leaned against it, whispering urgently to each other. I listened, indignant, as one found a stick or something to wedge the latch shut, and they talked about ransom money. I considered simply reaching through the wall to try and punch one of them. I was pretty sure I could do it, but I knew how hard their shells were. It would likely just hurt my knuckles. Besides, I thought as I looked up, no need. The round skylight at the top of the room was more than big enough for me to fit through, and the walls offered plenty of handholds. As I was picking out the best route, another hovercar roared up outside. My captors greeted the newcomers with forced casualness. My view between the sticks was limited, but the other person apparently hadn't noticed me yet. The first two agreed that the fallen sky car was exciting and claimed to have seen some alien beastie running off that-a-way. Before I could decide whether to yell something or not, other cars joined the growing crowd. None of these people seemed overly concerned about the thunder or the wind. All they wanted to talk about was the amazing alien thing that had fallen on their neighbor's land. What had come in it? Was it dangerous? Where did it go? Where was that neighbor anyway? The crowd relocated to cluster around the escape pod. Peering through the branches, I saw the first two turtledillos waving animatedly and pointing in the direction they claimed the alien had gone. Compared to the others, they looked scrawny and ill-groomed, and no one was paying the slightest bit of attention to them. Wonder why, I thought dryly. They're such honest, upstanding citizens. I stepped back and made my way over to the far side of the room where the handholds looked best, and started climbing. It was a little painful, what with my various aches and the arched shape of the wall, but I managed. It was trickiest near the top. The higher I got, the more I worried that my hands would slip and drop me onto the spiky, sparking alien crops below. I hooked my arms around the branches and moved up slowly. Finally, I reached the hole. Getting out of it was harder than I'd thought. I had to get both arms over the edge, grab hold of the metal railing that was of course only on the outside, then swing my legs over the abyss until I could wriggle upward to freedom. A whole platform with railings and a staircase greeted my eyes. What the heck? I guess they want to water the plants without getting in spark range, I thought as I lay on the platform, my heart beating wildly. Wonder how big the things get. After a few moments of catching my breath, I sat up to take in the scene. The crowd of turtledillos was still growing, though they were all looking away from me. I crept down the ladder and circled the building to approach from the side opposite the road. The two little liars spotted me first and did their best to blend into the crowd. Moments later, someone else noticed the tall figure walking toward them, with only the slightest limp, and the group's focus shifted instantly. Before they could figure out how to react, I adopted my best emissary from Earth voice. "I am displeased!" I thundered, striding forward with purpose. "Is it common to hold off-world dignitaries for ransom here?" The crowd scrambled to apologize, shooting each other wild looks and wasting no time in realizing who I was staring at. The two lowlifes were halfway to their car before multiple hands grabbed them and hauled them in front of me. Now, I'm not fond of acting like a vengeful god or anything along those lines. I didn't want to get these guys curb-stomped by their neighbors, but I also didn't want the community to think their actions were okay. I settled for giving them a good scolding and leaving their verdict in the hands of the locals who would share the consequences of further disapproval. What could they possibly do to make it up to me, they asked. They could give me a ride to the nearest shelter from the weather. It was getting worse. They fell all over themselves to offer vehicles, hurrying to tie up the two delinquents in the back of their own truck. Someone else would drive that. Moments later, I was crouched in the back of another truck, since I wouldn't fit in the passenger seat, and I was holding on grimly as the driver sped toward a farmhouse. Many others had piled into the back with me. Despite the wind, they had many questions, especially once they stopped worrying that I was going to smite them or something. The locals assumed I was there on official business, here to find the dangerous beastie that had fallen from the sky, and it took some explaining before they understood that I was the beastie. They immediately clamored for details. It wasn't hard to tell they'd never met anyone from off-world before. "Can you really jump over a house?" one asked. "No, but I could probably climb it," I said honestly. "What about over this truck?" "No, but I could vault over the hood if I got a head start." "Is it true you can imitate the sounds of any animal?" "Well, not any," I began, but the truck stopped before I could do any of my favorite impressions. When I turned away from the conversation, I was surprised to find the convoy halted in front of a single truck blocking the road. Someone muttered that it was the owner of this farmland, who hadn't given any of them permission to be here. I started to worry. A middle-aged turtledillo woman got out of the truck, wasting no time in striding toward us. "What in the name of the first egg is going on here?" Her shell paint was the green of fresh leaves. The neighbors all answered her at once, yelling from their own trucks, which made for an impenetrable wall of sound. She waved her hand, and they subsided like guilty schoolkids. I stood up in the truck bed. To her credit, she didn't blink at what must have been an unexpected sight. "One at a time. That's no way to behave in front of an honored visitor." She frowned at the others, then addressed me directly. "I apologize for this rabble. What brings your honored self to my farm?" "Thank you," I said, hiding how relieved I was that no one had been shot for trespassing. "It's a long story, but my sky car crashed, and I need to get to the capital soon, or at least tell them where I am. It's urgent." I realized as I spoke that the clouds would have obscured the scene from most watching skyships, though they might be able to pinpoint my location with electricity readouts. Wait, no, the plants probably interfered. At any rate, the authorities could do with some assistance in finding me. The farmer was ready to help. "Well, you're welcome to send them a message from home," she told me. "At any rate, let's get you out of this weather. Tall as you are, the sky sparks might take a liking to you." The soft corner of her beak quirked in a smile which disappeared as she turned to address the crowd. "All right, you lot. You know better than to trample all over my land. Get. I'll bring our honored guest indoors." Somebody piped up about the two troublemakers, which got them a fierce glare from the landowner. "You two," she said, stepping to the side to get a better view of where they were trussed up. "I told you last time that if I caught you here again, I'd shove sparklings between your plates and drag you home behind my car. I'm sure this lot will want to cart you off to the sheriff as soon as the weather allows, but I say next time it's the sparklings for you." At her dismissive wave, the truck carrying those two took off down the dirt road, followed by others. I waited until the way was clear to climb down. Once I was safely on the ground, I bid polite goodbyes to the locals who'd ridden beside me. Everyone waved in excitement as they left. Soon enough, it was just me and the farmer, whose name I didn't know. She fixed this as soon as we could hear each other over the motors. "My name is Prima Beetle Soil Master," she said as she waved us both toward her own truck, which was the same green as her shell paint. It was also big enough that it might just have legroom for me. "By what name should I be calling yourself?" "Robin Bennett," I said, following. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "And to meet you," Beetle said. "First alien we've had in these parts. No surprise to see every folk in driving distance coming for a gander. Say, do you need to close the top of your sky car? The rain'll get in." I looked over my shoulder at the distant escape pod, which was visibly open, and shook my head. "Let it," I told her. "To be honest, it belongs to someone who wronged me greatly. They deserve a little rain damage." The turtledillo barked a laugh, a funny sound, really, and opened the driver's side door. "I'd love to hear the storying behind that," she said. "I'll tell you what I can," I said, reaching the other door. "Some details I probably shouldn't say right now for security reasons." I folded myself into the passenger seat with as much grace as I could muster, trying not to hit any bruises. Success. "Of course," Beetle said magnanimously. "I'm not wanting to pry." She started the engine and sped away from the crash site, in the direction of what was probably her home. Thunder sounded again. I hoped the escape pod filled with water.